As we prepare to leave for World Youth Day 2016, it's a great importance for us to know one of the great saints of this World Youth Day 2016, and that is none other than Saint John Paul II. For those of us who are traveling both to Rome and to Krakow, we'll have the opportunity to pray at the tomb of Saint John Paul II. And for those of us, of course, who are going to just Krakow, we'll have the opportunity to literally walk in his footsteps and pray through his intercession with the large crowds that will gather there. It was St. John Paul II who was the longest reigning pope in modern history. He was the first non-Italian pope in over 455 years. During his reign as successor of St. Peter, he visited over 129 countries and traveled over 700,000 miles, wishing to bring the message of mercy and the message of the gospel as literally to the four corners of the world. It was in 1984 that St. John Paul II inaugurated on Palm Sunday what is now known as World Youth Day that we're participating in. World Youth Day has become the largest gathering of young people in the history of the whole entire world. John Paul II was born in 1920 to a Polish family, so of course he's a native of Poland. What a blessing that is. His mother died at a young age, his brother died as well, and in fact by the time that he was a young adult, his father passed away as well. John Paul II's life was very much so known with a lot of tragedy, suffering, and difficulty. He lived in the midst of the Nazi regime, where many of his friends were taken away to concentration camps. He decided to make the answer to his calling in life. He entered the seminary, which at that time was underground due to what was taking place politically in Poland at the time. He quickly rose in the ranks, being named a Polish bishop, and ultimately the Cardinal of Krakow, Poland, at a very, very young age. It was then in 1978, on October 16th, that he was elected the 264th Pope of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. It was from there that he began teaching, as we now know, very popularly known as the theology of the body, and began to work in a very ardent effort to bring an end to communism and an end to the Cold War. John Paul II, a very close friend of Mother Teresa, looked for every opportunity he could to serve those who were underprivileged and those who were in need. He was a man who tremendously loved the Eucharist and strove to promote this devotion throughout the world. He was very close and devoted to our Blessed Mother, adding what we now refer to as the 5 luminous mysteries to the Rosary. And he was a man who very much sought that after the Second Vatican Council to strive with all of his heart to bring forth the reforms necessary for the life of the Church. John Paul II died in 2005 and recently has been canonized. So we now refer to him as Saint John Paul II. Because of his great theology, his great amount of writing that's been done, many are already referring to him as Saint John Paul the Great. He was a priest who loved the Eucharist, who loved our Blessed Mother, who sought after peace and justice for all, and was a pope who very, very much so loved the young church and strove to put them at the forefront of his ministry. When we think of John Paul II, let's think of a man who is very much so like us. He was young at heart, even until the last days of his life. And he very much so desired all of us to follow in the footsteps of our Lord Jesus Christ. May he intercede for us throughout this World Youth Day and lead us all the more to further zeal and joy for the gospel message.